I'm back at it. New podcast. It's great to be back after taking a few weeks away. Quickly, while I've got the platform, I just want to say a big thank you for all the many messages and kind regards I've received about my dad. It's been really uplifting to see just how much that he meant to people. The messages have been great to go back and read through. There's been hundreds of them, and as I say, really uplifting to see. And I've really enjoyed the pictures that have been sent, especially the ones of him in Amsterdam in his little Everton cap before the cup final in '85. They've given me a good laugh through this weird time. So yeah, as I say, just wanted to take a quick moment to express gratitude before getting into today's podcast. I do hope you enjoy it. It's a pleasure to be joined by someone who continues to have a brilliant career in the industry, even after his playing days. He wore the shirts of Everton, Rangers, PSV, Manchester City, and Leicester before venturing into consultancy and starting his own sports agency, CCR Sports. He's also a sports columnist for the Liverpool Echo, but I think above all else, he's an Evertonian. Michael Ball, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me, pal. How's things?
Yeah, no, good. Thanks for having me on.
Brilliant. As I say, I'm really looking forward to speaking to you, as obviously you've fulfilled the dream of pulling on that blue shirt, and you've also achieved a lot elsewhere, like playing abroad and your agency. But to start off, for the Grand Old Team audience, I'd like to spend maybe 15, 20 minutes covering Everton at the present moment. Funnily enough, before I had to take a break, Everton were unbeaten, top of the league. And since then, we've played three and lost three, fallen to seventh. Of course, it's still early on in the season, but what have you made of these last three games?
Yeah, no, the start of the season was great. We were playing some good football, a good sort of creating a lot of chances and putting a lot of pressure on the opposition, and we're coming away with the results. And as I was saying in my column at the time, yeah, it's great. The feel factor was brilliant for all the Blues. We haven't been at the top of the league for a long time, and the spirit of the Blues was number one, and everything was all great and bouncing. But also, as I was saying in my echo, there was a lot of room for improvement in the team. The way we were playing, we were leaving I thought, big gaps between our midfield and defence, which could hurt us. And with the first few games of the season, the opposition never sort of got onto it and never probably put the chances away. We got away with them. But the last three games, I think the opposition have done the homework a little bit. And also our star players have been sort of either suspended and injured since that international break. Our form hasn't been the same. We've gone back to being a little bit pedestrian, a little bit obvious in our play, and with the opposition doing their homework. So the collective of those two, I think, has really hurt us. And when you got big players, I think every side in the Premier League, your main guys are missing. You lose that sort of rhythm, and the guys who stepped in didn't have the quality to sort of to keep us winning football games, which is disappointing. The international break just sort of come at the wrong time for us. You're playing these sort of even in the League Cup games, we were playing 2 or 3 games a week, and we had that rhythm. We were winning. The feel factor was great, and then we had the international break. We had a short period of time to get ourselves ready for the derby. Players, traveling from South America, and we're expecting them to be 100%. But we got a point, and then I just hoped we could bounce back, and we never. We sort of fell into a sort of a flat period, which was disappointing to see. But that's it now. It's happened. So it's up to Carlo, the coaching staff, and the players to bounce back and get that sort of fast play that we started off with the season. We know it's going to be a strange season with the pre-season being very, very short. Players will pick up niggles, and you've just got to be able to manage it. And unfortunately, the lads who have come in haven't sort of hit the heights we were expected to be, to come and show Carlo what they're all about and show the frustration of why they're being left out of the squad. When you've come in, they haven't sort of stood out at all, which is really disappointing.
Yeah, definitely. You touch on the absences there, and like me, I'm sure you've seen a whole spectrum of reactions to the performances of late. You know, I've seen, don't worry for Ancelotti to achieve what he wants to achieve. It'll take a few years. So, you know, I'm not bothered to, there's too much of a drop off in quality when the likes of Richarlison, Digne and James are missing. And we're absolutely awful. The performances haven't been good enough, yes, but I don't think the answer is that binary and polarising as that. So what does the Evertonian in you at the moment say in regard to the squad?
Yeah, well, before the season, you were pretty pleased with the work they did in the summer, bringing the players in and bringing the players in earlier. You know, numerous of seasons before, we brought in players, you know, maybe roughly on the last day, and they've turned up not fit or they've turned up injured, and it's took them, you know, a few games and months to sort of get to the level where we want them to be at. And that was disappointing because by the time they got, you know, say Gomez and Mina at the time, by the time they got fit, ready to play for us, you know, the league was gone. Off, you know, we lost so many games that there was not much for us to fight for. So the plus side, we got them in early, and the difficult side is to keep them all fit. And I think the change of how we played after the international break, because we, you know, got Richarlison, you know, he's fantastic effort of coming back. You know, but when he receives the ball, he can run 30, 40 yards with the ball. And with him suspended for them games, the guys who stepped in can't play his way. We didn't have sort of like a plan B. We had a packed midfield, but no runners in our midfield. So we played, you know, I said we call it like alien football. We played a game of football at a style that we've never done under Carlo, and especially haven't done it this season. I'm expecting to sort of, on paper, you think you're going to win them football games, but when haven't got forward thinking midfielders who can run with the ball, it's difficult. The only outlet we've got is Calvert-Lewin, so all the opposition have to do is surround Calvin and stop the threat. You know, Calvin, you know, he hasn't been running in behind us much because he's had successful with Richarlison bombing down the left. He got Rodriguez on the other side, sort of coming inside and creating opportunities for them. So he's trying to stick to his game plan because it's working, which I understand. But we've got midfielders there who are great passers of the ball. We've got Sigurdsson, who is supposed to be creating chances for us. But when he hasn't got anyone to sort of look up and they're not making runs, it's difficult. All we're doing is going backwards and sideways. And if you're the opposition, you sort of get onto them a little bit and go, they've got no threat. They've got no threat. So let's protect our goal. And when we win the ball back, we can punish them. And as the game goes on, those last three games, you can see the opposition grow into the game. They weren't panicking. They just thought, you know, they've got no threat here. Besides set pieces, which is the only, probably this has been the downfall. Early on the season has been good. We scored in front of them, been defending them really well. But since the international break, the set pieces is probably the only time we've looked like threatening. And you know, sometimes you obviously don't win them all, but you don't want to be playing football matches just to win games, just on a set pieces. So set pieces are very important in tight games, and we've got to work on them a little bit to defend them wise. You know, it's quite surprising how successful we were early on. Michael Keane has been fantastic with defending our set pieces, but we're very, very deep. And I think Gary Neville now has sort of spotted it on Sky Sports of how deep we're defending. It's probably to protect Jordan from not coming out, but it gives a chance that if anyone gets a flick on the ball, defenders or strikers, that it's going to cause us problems. So I really feel that we need to be a bit more braver when we're playing normally in open play. I feel like we're far too deep still. And that sort of number 10 role for the opposition is huge. You know, we watched the Man United game and I've seen like Martial, I've seen Rashford, I've seen
Fernandez did the Fernandez.
It's basically finding spaces in that gap and then returning with the ball. And that's, you know, as a defender, that's sort of, you know, it gets me frustrated because they shouldn't, if they find that space, they will do because they're great footballers, but you shouldn't be able to turn. And they're turning and then running at our back four because our back four is so deep. And maybe it's what Carlo's asking of them, or they're not sort of brave enough to play a higher line. And I feel that with VAR, we can discuss that for hours and days, VAR. But while it's there, if I was defending right now, I'll be playing as high as line as possible because you just don't know if a toenail or an ear or anything's offside. That you can be braver to hold that line that split second, you know, longer. And that's the most frustrating thing. Alan was, he's playing well in games, but he's supposed to be protecting the back four. But when there's such space in that middle, it's difficult for him to one press the ball, but also to protect his two centre halves as well, because the space is so big. So hopefully during this sort of international break, Carlo, obviously, majority of the players have gone away international, but he's got a chance to speak to the guys, the squad players, that if they need to step in, if there's been injuries, which has happened, that this is what he wants from them, and to work on it, making it difficult for the opposition to break us down, because at this moment in time, I feel it's a little bit too easy for them to sort of get into the game and start causing us problems, which the good teams, the good players, and but I just feel like we're making it a little bit easier for them by leaving the door open by these spaces.
Yeah, you make some brilliant points there. One, in regard to the squad players, like the chemistry and the style of play is just different to the usual starters. It works in the League Cup against the Fleetwood and a subpar West Ham, but as you say, up against these top sides, it's just completely different. And another point that you made rightly so there is that the spaces left by the defence and the midfield. I think the best example of that, you just look at Fernandez's header against us, where he just ghosted in between the centre halves. As you say, I did have a look at your pieces in the Liverpool Echo, and you highlighted those concerns about the defence and the midfield, where we struggled most against United and against Southampton and Newcastle. Calvert-Lewin lacks service. It is disheartening to see, but on the other hand, Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison did manage to find goals over the international break. Do you think we can bounce back against Fulham?
Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, because we prove we can. We can beat mostly any team when we're at our game. But I just feel it's our mindset at times. What I was explaining before, it was say the Man United game, which sticks out about that gap. I flip it the other way a lot and go, how many times did I see Sigurdsson in that area where he should be, receiving the ball and turning, and that gives that space for Calvin to make a run? How many times did I see Calvert-Lewin coming short in that space and turning? I've seen Rashford do it. So the whole team itself, as I said, we played alien. So it's like we never really knew the system. We were sort of trying singly instead of as a team. So I think that's what Carlos sort of really needs to work on his team now, during this sort of break, that we need to sort of create spaces, keep wide. And it's difficult. We've got the Charles on one side, but then we play with Bernard, who likes to come in. That makes it cramped. But we should find space somewhere else on the pitch to hit the opposition. So fingers crossed, Carlo, it's absolutely brilliant to have him at the football club, and you put all his trust in him. How he wants to play the game and how he goes about it. But so it's up to the players to step up to the plate. Only going to give them the instructions and how he wants to play. But as soon as you step over that field, it's the mentality I feel that we lack at times over the numerous years. When things sort of sometimes don't go against us, our heads goes down. And earlier on this season, we showed good strength. We've been a goal down. I've been watching it, as everyone from the couch, thinking I'm not that worried because we're creating opportunities. But since the international break, when we did concede, I'm thinking, how are we going to get back into this game? And it was only maybe via set pieces, which we have got good ball deliveries, and they've been very, very poor. So we haven't been popping the question. We've been hitting the first man. They've been getting floated in last minute, which it's sort of like schoolboy errors stuff, really. So that's what I mean by we're making it easy for the opposition to stop us by. We're not making it difficult for them. We're putting the ball in dangerous areas. Have a bit more belief in your ability to put the ball in a dangerous area, which to be doing at Finch Farm. Carl would be happy with the reason why Sigurdsson's taking him is because Finch Farm in the practice and he's on form, he's spot on. For one reason or another, the consistency at the match level, he's letting himself and the team down, and that'd be really frustrating for Carlo.
Yeah, most definitely. And as you say, while there was that sort of elation of earlier on in the season, there's just been times where you sort of slapped in the face with the Everton of years past, where the mentality and breaking through that barrier just seems to just rear its head again, which, as you say, is concerning. But again, I know it seems like something that we just seem to regurgitate all the time, but at the end of the day, I don't think we've ever had a better manager than Carlo Ancelotti, and I'm sure the players, it's on them. I don't think it's exactly on the manager. I don't think you can.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I always try and put myself. I'm a blue through and through, and I'm frustrated every time we drop points, and and it's dead easy to get on players' backs. But also in my mindset, I understand how difficult it is, and sometimes being out of the team, you're sort of on the bench, you're a squad player, and you're expecting, you're waiting for your opportunity. And I mentioned a few times, Colin, that when it does come, you've got to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
But I understand it's difficult because you're playing maybe one game and you might play a League Cup, might not play again for 2 or 3 games, and then you're expected to be, Pele all of a sudden. But that is difficult. But that's just that's modern day football. So you've got to sort of find a way to keep your body fit and ready and sharp and train harder than anybody else. And then when your opportunity comes, that you've got all the tools to go out and show everybody what you're capable of. I just feel sometimes our sort of mindset is like, we passed the buck a little bit, and I think that's just maybe down to the types of players we've got. That we've got a lot of ball possession players. We like to play football, like to play it the right way, and which is great. But there's a lot of players similar. We haven't got the guys talking about earlier, but running with the midfield to break them lines. I see teams against us sort of the midfield jog back into position, and we've got 2 lines of 4 or a 5 and a 4 to try and break down, which is difficult against any team. Especially Premier League teams. So we don't make it easier for ourselves. So you just want to be a little bit braver. Get Sigurdsson or whoever playing that number 10 role in the right danger zones, and hopefully we start creating more chances. So it's up to the players. Obviously our trust is full of behind Carlo, but the players' desire. We won them first games because we all played as a team and we done the dirty work. We worked hard as well off the ball. We made it difficult for the opposition. We kept it tight. Pickford was on form. If you say it's the Tottenham game, he didn't have much to do, and all of a sudden he pulled off 2 good saves, kept us in the game, and we won. And that's what you want. They're the type of performances you need. But since the international break, I think they sort of took the eye off the dirty work. You can't just turn up at the Premier League and expect to win. You still got to do the dirty work, the hard yards, and have leaders in the team. You can see Alan's a leader, but he's got his own job to worry about. And I feel that, at times he's been fantastic for us, and at times I'm thinking he's out of position. But I feel that's just the way we're set up a little bit, where that gap between the midfield and the defence is so deep. It's making it difficult for our midfield. We've got 3 in there, so there shouldn't be any spaces. Normally you play with 2, you'd expect to find gaps and spaces, but when you're playing 3, it should be all the space should be out wide. But teams are finding it down the middle, which is quite alarming.
Yeah, definitely. That's some great analysis, and I think there are some messages there that the squad of players really could do with picking up on. We'll leave it at that for the topical issues and get onto your career, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no problem.
One of the things that stands out to me when I did a bit of reading and research is that, from a young age, you went to the Everton games as a kid, you were in Liverpool's youth setup, you were educated at Lilleshall, which I'm sure was a fantastic experience. It all points towards this tunnel vision and this ultimate desire to wanting to be within the football environment. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. There was nothing else I was, concerned about. There was nothing else I wanted to do. I wasn't really interested in school. I wasn't really interested in anything else, music or, I don't know, fashion or whatever. All I had as a kid was Everton football, kids of the football, and just spent all my time kicking the ball against the fence in the garden, doing the neighbours' heads in, and I ballooned it over and jumping over and that's all it was. I was just speaking to my friends, and even when I was back at the YTS, the sort of the dedication or as you said, the tunnel vision. I've just had one eye. I was just getting into that first team, and that's all I wanted to do. And I've been fortunate because coming even from school ages, our teams were always good. It wasn't just myself; my teammates were good levels. So when you're alongside better players, you play better. And I've had that fortune of nearly at every sort of age group all the way through from when I started. And I was younger, and a few players were older than me, and I was getting in their team. But when you're playing with better players, it makes you better. You pick up. I just sort of, I was like a sponge and take it all in. And if I could see somebody do anything different, I'll go, well, I'll try that and try and add that to my game. And that was sort of like a mindset that I was like all through my career, really. Even when I was still playing, you're at some clubs and you bring in a world star. You look at him, how does he, handle himself? What does he do? Anything different than what I do? And you just try to add it to your game to improve yourself. And And that's all I was like as a kid. I was playing with lads who were a little older than me, stronger than me. But I had to try and find out a way of of getting involved in the game and putting my own stamp on it. And as a lefty, you get kicked back to being left back. You start as striker and you sit in midfield, wing back, and then that's it. Then you're at left back, and that's when you're sort of stuck. But I enjoyed playing like any position. Especially at Everton. Like Howard used to put me in midfield a lot, and I just enjoyed playing the game, and putting that jersey on was a dream come true.
Yeah, of course. And it's funny that you say that. Obviously, playing. I've heard that several times when talking to ex-pros, that sort of resounding message of playing around good players makes you better. And I'm sure from what I've heard, you were around some good players when you were on the other side of Stanley Park during that time. Funnily enough, my cousin, who played for Accrington Stanley, played for Liverpool when he was a kid, and similar to you as well. When he used to be training, he always used to have his Everton top on underneath.
Oh yeah, well, they were great. But again, it was, when I started playing football and growing up around about Formby Junior Sports Club, and our team was pretty good, and our coach was one of the dads was Hugh Macaulay. His son Barry was on our side, so he was sort of half coaching his kid and scouting for Liverpool, and then he asked us to come and go into Melwood. 2 or 3 of us from the same team. So we, for a number of the years, I think for 8, 9 years old, we were going in. But it wasn't like the days now where you get all the kit of, which thankfully, you don't get the kits and the tracksuits to go in with your name on. You just turned up with your own kit, and the only kits I had with Everton on. So it was great. The coaches were fantastic with Highway and Dave Shannon and Huey, and they did have a little bit of banter, give me stick, but I didn't care. I just felt good wearing blue going into Melwood. And as you get older, it gets a little bit serious, because you start talking about schoolboy forms, and
of course,
clubs back then will start inviting you in to come and over the Easter break to sort of see what level you're at, and Man United and Oldham, and all I'm waiting for is Everton, and Everton never sort of come calling, and you're just thinking, I've got to make a decision soon. And Highway, put me in his office. You got Rush, you got Fowler, you got McManaman to speak to me, to try and convince me to stay, and said that it's you can play for this club, and even though you support the Blues. And I was just looking at me. It's not me. Graham Souness tried to convince me as well, and he was Scottish, I was English, and they were great. They were trying their utmost, but my heart was just on the other side. And as soon as I got the call off Ray Hall, or my father did, that Howard wanted to meet me for a meal. My mind was made up. One, I was made up. It happened, and 2, I knew exactly what I was going to. I was just going to go into sign for the team I've always wanted to do. But Liverpool was great. It was good. The coaching was spot on. But my heart was always going to be on the blue. So waiting for that phone call seemed like forever, but gladly it happened.
Yeah, luckily. And you mentioned there on the red side some of the names like Fowler, Rush, and I'm sure obviously growing up watching us through our most successful times, you've seen some tremendous players. Who were your role models and the players that you looked up to as a kid?
As a kid, really, it was just going. We were successful, weren't we? So it was easy, and there was probably quite a few. You could, I used to love sort of Bracewell. I used to love Peter Reid's passing with the outside of his foot across the pitch, and then but Kevin Sheedy was a lefty. My eyes were always on Kevin Sheedy. My dad would always say, "Look at Trevor Steven," because he wouldn't stop running. He was fit, but I was probably more like Kev, not run too much, just use my left foot. But then obviously Andy Gray was scoring at that time when I was going a lot with all these diving headers and stuff. Back then I used to love heading the ball, and so there was a majority. And then there was obviously Big Nev, so there was loads to sort of, you go in the park with your mates, don't you? And if you're in goal, you're Nev. You're up front, I was Andy Gray, my mate would be Graham Sharp, and he was shooting Kevin Sheedy. So we had such a good squad back then. It was them types of players. And when you get slightly bit older and you find where's my position actually going to be if I'm ever going to make it, you start looking at to other teams that were successful, and we had the dodgy indoor aerial in your house to chance to get the Welsh TV for Scorio, and you're watching AC Milan games, and you see the AC Milan's defence with Baresi and Maldini and stuff, and you just start looking at what do they do and what do they add to the game. And it was like I was saying earlier, it's like a sponge. You sort of look at players who you think you can try and emulate, and just take a piece of every one of them and try and add it to your game.
Yeah, definitely. I think for any young players or aspiring pros, that sponge mentality is certainly something to adopt. Something I'm always interested, sorry, to hear about is Everton throughout the 1990s. You'll know yourself, as you sort of went into there, that especially during Kendall's first spell at Everton, it's an easy club to fall in love with. Historically and traditionally, we're very successful and can be considered one of the pioneers of English football. My granddad played for the reserves in the 1950s and brought me up on the stories of, the 60s and the 80s. So when you try and tell me about how traumatic the 90s were, I just sort of look at you like, get lost. Like, I just don't buy it. But I know you were still young at the time, but from your experiences as both a player and a supporter, what was that decade like?
It was mixed, obviously, for myself, because I finished school in sort of '96. When I was at Lilleshall, got invited for the cup final '95, and Wes Brown, who was my roommate, he went on behalf of United, and we won that game. So you're full of joys, and then we've won a trophy in a probably season or at the time that we were probably underperforming. If you look at that team that we had some great players, but we just never seemed to click in the league for one reason or another. But we ended up getting a cup, which was great. It's there. I always say that now, that we've got to take every cup seriously, because it's in your history. It gets added to another trophy in the cabinet, and for one reason or another, we don't seem to take like say the League Cup serious enough at times, and there's probably opportunities we've let go. But then obviously '96, you finish school, you start YTS at Everton. So to me, it was brilliant, because I'm being part of this club that I've always wanted to do. I'm trying to learn off, you train with the YTSs for a short period of time till I was 17 in the October, and then you end up being with the reserves, which are some good players around there. There's Limpar, Samways, and good. You've had fantastic careers, so you're learning off them, and you're trying to sort of gauge where you are. How far away am I from being there? We had like Andy Inchcliffe was great with us, Terry Phelan, and I've got to think, well, I've got to push them to one side. What do I need to go about it? So I was mindset of that's what's my next level. How can I get into the reserves? And when I've done that, how can I get into the first team? That's where my sort of head was at. And it was great being invited by Nev. I don't know if many listeners remember Big Nev before games. It could be at Goodison Park about 11:30 in the morning on the pitch. Doing sort of keep ups with his shins with with the other goalkeepers, and there'll be a couple of sort of YTSs there because we need to clean the balls and get the balls out. So I love being a part of that. I've been doing a few keep ups with Ned before the game to take the balls and clean them, and then I'll run round to the Gladys Street where all my mates were to probably shout at them, from the Gladys Street and sing, and and think they're my sort of teammates, they're my work colleagues, I suppose. But I was a fan again at the Gladys Street, and then you just turn back up at Melwood on Monday, and you got professional head on. But that, so to me, I loved it. And then, we weren't going through the best period of time, but I was just wanting the opportunity to play. And before Big Joe went, Willie Donaghy and Jimmy Gable, they were fantastic with me, and they got me involved with the first team quite early on, just training with them. Away games, they would, try and make the cups of tea for Nev, and no matter what cup of tea it was, had too strong or too weak or whatever. But he just loved doing it, loved being a part of it, and he done that because he didn't want me to be sort of maybe starstruck if I got called upon at any moment in time. That I'm sort of used to being around the first team and understand, what they're all about. So that was a great experience for me, just to travel on the coach, not on the bench, just sort of being a part of it. And it felt like I was thinking, when's it actually going to happen? When's my debut going to happen? And I just sort of felt that year was sort of slipping away from me, thinking, well, this is going to be this year of learning off them, being around them, and then maybe next year I might get the opportunity. And then when Joe got sacked and he left, it was sort of disappointing for me, because I'm thinking, I think he likes me, and I might have scraped sort of the last game of the season or something. There was moments I was thinking I could get my debut, but so I was gutted when he left, because I'm thinking all that hard work this season I've done to get where I am, from YTS in the October to being in the first team and having the first team, by the end of Christmas was, it was sort of every day seemed dead long, thinking, when's this day going to happen? So when he left, it was disappointing for me. But luckily enough, Dave Watson took over, and he's obviously witnessed it. He's obviously seen how I was in and around the first team and how I was training with them, every day. And my debut did come because of an injury, against Tottenham. But I was just sort of sitting on the bench thinking it's going to be, another one of them days when just sitting on the bench as a number. And it's not going to happen. But then, luckily enough for me, I think Terry Fearon got injured, or Craig Short got injured, and my moment came just before half time. So that was great feeling. That was a big result back then. Because we beat Tottenham 1-0, and it was the way the season panned out. It was a big win for us, and I understood what it was with the Evertonian situation. And my dad would always remind me, the poor season we've had. But on a personal note, it was a positive one for me, because I was doing what I wanted to do, and I got where I wanted to be, and now it was also how do I stay here. And yeah, it was a difficult period in the 90s for everybody, but it was I was living my dream a little bit, and yeah, we'd like to be finishing higher in the league and winning more football games, but it was just putting that blue shirt on meant everything to me. So it was harder for me to take the criticism of where we were, but it was personally it was great for me to just put that blue shirt on, every time.
Of course, and something that strikes me from that is just the importance of patience. I mean, I know you said earlier that you did have this tunnel vision and almost like a bucket list of like, right, I've got this done, now on to the next. And that sort of patience wearing thin of when's the debut ever going to come. So I do think that's really sort of a vital part for young lads.
It is, yeah, with the young kids coming through, I understand them. They every club's different, and you look at some clubs there may be a couple of 17-year-olds in, and other clubs, there might be a 20, 21-year-old who hasn't had much league experience, and it's every club's different. I only got, I was patient because I probably knew where my level was. I probably, if Everton were doing really well and up the league, I probably wouldn't have got my opportunity. And because we're probably struggling, and they wanted probably more energy and less fear, maybe he put a bit more trust in the youth kids. But I knew I had two internationals in front of me. When I was breaking through, there was Andy Hinchcliffe, who was in the England team, and Terry Fearon. So I knew it wasn't going to be easy. So I knew that I had to be patient, but I had to be ready for when we were called upon to grab my opportunity. And it is all about patience. And while you're patient, it is just question yourself, and you look at yourself in the mirror a little bit and think, what are they doing in front of me that I can add to my game? And it's just putting sort of belief in yourself that your opportunity will come, and make sure you take it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, being born in the August of '98, I missed out on an awful lot. Probably more bad than good, to be honest. But one of the things I'm gutted about is I didn't get to see Andrei Kanchelskis play live. Am I right in saying you played with him? Yeah.
I played well at Everton. I don't think I did, but at Rangers I did. But Andrei possibly helped me get my debut, really, because obviously before most games you have the first team set up roughly as the manager probably want to set up on the weekend, against maybe the rest of the reserves and the subs and stuff, and you have a sort of bounce game to go through a few tactical moves and stuff. And obviously Andre being right winger and I was left back, I've been called over to fill in the space to be one of the 11 against the first team, and I didn't really understand how it all worked, so I was taking it serious. I was thinking it was like a proper match, so I didn't know it was sort of stop-start situation. So when Andre got the ball, I was clapping him a little bit, probably tackling a bit too much, and when he was running at me, I was stopping him. And Joe Royal basically had to stop the training session and shout like, "Ball, just let him get past you. We're trying to do a drill." Maybe Andre probably wasn't, obviously not doing 100%, and probably thinking, "Who's this little lad here? What's he doing?" And it was sort of laughing and joking afterwards. But it happened sort of. I didn't like people getting past me, so I was like, "Well, I don't care who you are. You're not getting past me, or I'm not making it easy for you." So that's probably put a spark in Joe Royal's head to think, I'm going to include him with the first team a little bit more, and also maybe Dave Watson, that to go, hang on, he's not, Andrei Kanchelskis is struggling to get past him here, so this kid might have something. But him and around the place, Andrei was great as the YTS lad. He used to look after the YTS guys. I think he used to send them all out to get the national lottery back then. National lottery, you couldn't do lucky dips, but you throw a good few quid at some of the YTS lads who run over to the shop and they'll stand there with the little pens and mark out the numbers. And when he left, I think he bought all the staff a lot of presents to thank you. I think everyone realised that what a player he was, and watching him as a fan he was always great, especially with the goals he scored at Anfield and stuff. But it was a big sort of scoop when we got him from Man United. It was £5 million. Joe paid for him. But yeah, no, he's just the quality of them. And when you used to watch them, you've got Limpard and Kanchelskis. They were proper good footballers. The brain of what he could do. And when he moved to Rangers, he was one of the first to welcome me to the club, and he liked it because I liked switching the ball from left back to right wing. The Hinchcliffe used to do it a lot to him, and he wanted to bring that to me, bring that to his game in Scotland, which didn't really last too long because he was out the door not long after I moved up. But he was just a special talent, and you just know when you see players at that caliber, they've just got that something different to win football games.
Brilliant. Do you reckon he's the most technically gifted player that you've had? I mean, teammate wise.
Yeah, maybe. But when I keep on getting, you get asked by the people like yourselves sometimes, like who's your best 11 or who's the best player you played against and with, and they're always difficult questions to ask because you've got to put yourself in certain situations. But when I always think back, Anders Limpar seems to always crop up in my head. And maybe because we spent more time together, playing reserve games more with him, how he wanted to play. He could play football one touch, and 11 aside, he played two touch. He could ping the ball 30, 40 yards with his right foot or left foot, and he'd be staying behind at Belfield, doing sort of kicking the ball against the wall. But you get like the YTS lads at the time, it'd be like Jamie Milligan, myself, and whoever, and practicing our technique. And he had everything. He was skillful. He was very clever. He was so small and so slight, but he was clever at sort of getting in front of players. And I think all round, he just sort of had everything. As a sort of footballer, his technique was perfect. His running technique was perfect, and that's what he used to sort of. And maybe because I've spent more time with it, that I remember him more of what he was capable of with the football and the career he had, and obviously how good he was at Arsenal and obviously with Sweden. And I feel he was probably probably the most gifted at that time, and it's just probably the way we play football back then that probably didn't suit them. We had say Vinnie Samways, good footballer, Granty, and Andes, but we were probably known as the Dogs of War more than the actual quality that we had, which was sort of probably a bit negative, and probably the players didn't like that sort of comment of Dogs of War, which they were known as because of the midfield of Parky and Barry Horn, etc. But the quality of it, you've got Andrei Kanchelskis and Limpar in your midfield. You're going to cause teams problems, and I think that's probably the reason why we won the FA Cup is the performances of Limpar.
Yeah, I've heard that several times that the group of players didn't quite enjoy that tagline of the Dogs of War. But yeah, I'm absolutely gutted. I've missed out on players such as that. They did seem like such talents, but luckily, on the other hand, when it comes to some of the bad that I missed out on, I luckily missed out on the great escapes of 94 and 98. Now, obviously you played a role within that escape of 98. How were they for your nerves? Obviously, sort of fulfilling two different roles for each one.
94, I was just obviously in the queuing up outside the Gladys Street. I think around about 10:30 in the morning with all my mates just to try to get in. And all I remember really of that game is I think Vinnie Jones getting booed before the pitch when they called the Wimbledon guys come on, and then Barry Horn scoring, and the rest of it you can't really got no much memory of it. And it's great because you're with your mates and we stay up and you're just in that moment. When I was playing, I was never really too concerned. I don't know why. I never probably because I was sort of such a blue that I had that sort of daft mentality. Well, whatever, we're not going to go down. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen type thing. But listening to other people, ex-players, podcasters, maybe like Don Hutchinson and stuff, I've heard their stories about it, and it's things start coming into place a little bit. How things were sort of building up between that week coming through, and Howard took us away to a hotel, which was never done before. So we did things differently, but maybe because I was used to going away with England, staying in a hotel before games, that it wasn't, didn't seem different to me. I didn't really get onto it at the time. Like Howard wanted to get us away, relax together, and sort of be around, and then all turn up at the game together as a squad, which you see happen nowadays before every game. But back then, that was a big decision. You didn't want people going home and staying up late and or struggling to sleep or whatever. But I didn't really get onto it. I wasn't aware of that was Howard's sort of way of trying to get the players sort of relaxed and then ready and concentrating for the game. But then as soon as you start playing the game, it's different. You sort of your tunnel vision to do what we needed to do, and then the only really moment I've got is when Coventry scored, where sort of my heart sort of sank a little bit. You can sense the crowd's nervousness, and you're thinking, "Oh no, this could actually happen." That's when I really sort of it got to me a little bit. My frustrations at the game. I got a kick on the sideline, like a bit of a late tackle on my knee. So the physio pulled me to one side. I was off the pitch by the family enclosure, and I was arguing with the physio that I'm not coming off. He slapped me across the face to basically say, "Bally, like wake up, mate. Your legs got a hole in. You've got to come off." And so I was fuming. Obviously gutted. So I was walking off, and Howard looked at me with, I obviously had like tears in my eyes, and said, "What's up with you, lad?" And I said, "Well, he won't let me play on." And he went, "Well, get back on the pitch then." So I turned around and just ran on the pitch. And it could have been, right or wrong decision, but luckily enough, we had that sort of adrenaline rush when the final whistle went, and we scraped over the line. And it was obviously brilliant for everybody involved. And Don spoke really good of what happened with Howard. He put himself away in the office, and he had a moment to himself. But I was getting thrown up by the doctors and the physios around the throat of how I disrespected them, on the sideline in public. But everyone else. I don't think the lads were. I don't think we were like celebrating. I think it was sort of relief in the changing rooms. We were sort of. They knew the seriousness of it all, and it's like they've done it, but it wasn't obviously a season to be celebrating afterwards. And because of my knee situation, I had to go back into Belfield the next morning to see the doctors, and Howard was there, and he just gives a massive big hug. And I think he probably sensed that was going to be his last game, and he just goes, what a day, what a night, and I was just coming through my tablet. So I think it was more afterwards that it's probably sank in of how close we are. And, and when you get a bit older and wiser and you look back at that year and you look back at where we were in the league, it's a sort of, if I look at that now, I'd be going, oh my goodness, that's real massive opportunity of getting relegated. But when I was there in and around it, I was never really phased. I never sort of took it in. I think I just done it by game. And there's maybe once I remember, I think it was the Southampton game away where we didn't perform, and the word sort of got mentioned of relegation. I just looked up. I'm thinking, what are you on about? Like if you have that mentality, you're never gonna, get out of it. They were probably right. The senior pros, they can probably see what was going to happen. I was probably too young and naive to sort of realised the seriousness of it all. I was probably too sort of cooked up in my own little bubble of I'm playing for Everton, I'm doing my dream, and I just want to win every game. And if it doesn't work, just move on to the next one. It's only sort of, as I said now, sort of looking back of like how bad and how serious the situation actually was.
Yeah, I simply just can't fathom the possibility of Everton even, being considered really as being relegation candidates. And just on that, really, just got to say, good man, Howard, for letting you finish the job.
Well, that's where the doctors were shouting at me, and they gave me the big telling off, basically saying I was half a yard short. I could have got the club relegated. I was like, oh, it's not my fault,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, you don't, you know, I just want to be a part of trying to save the club. You know,
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to be, and probably the doctors were right. I might have been half a yard short. I might have slipped up, or you know, I think it was Darren Huckabee. You know, it was a dangerous player. He might have took me on, and I wasn't, 100%. And you know, if they scored, it could have been down to me. So they're obviously trying to protect me, but also protect the club. And thankfully, Howard let me on the pitch. I was a part of it right till the end. But yeah, the crowd and the nervousness near the end after Dion's Dublin goal was something that's probably woke me up of the seriousness of it all.
Yeah, definitely. I'd imagine so. And listen, I can empathise greatly with players with recurring injury problems. I've had multiple knee dislocations and I've had a hamstring surgery in there as well. Unfortunately, it plays a massive part in how football executives view the utility and the market value of their players. How old were you when the knee started impacting your career?
It was a strange one because all through my career I've never had I never had a muscle injury. I never had an injury. Les Helm, the old physio at Everton, used to say to me, "You never. I don't even see you. I only see you at the match days." I was never in the gym. I was never like in and around the medical centre. I just turned up in my boots, trained, and went home. That was I was unless like come in, do a few weights, or want to see you about. I forget you're here, and I was like, well, I don't want to be part of the medical side. I just want to play. But then I was playing a lot of football. I've seen a lot of my teammates my own age, so like Wes Brown and Mike, Michael Owens and Stephen Gerrard at Liverpool. I've been having niggles, like back problems, hamstring problems with his knees, and I touched lucky out at the time. I was okay, but I was playing, alongside with England and playing a lot of games, and the protection, especially when sort of Walter Smith come in. He understood I was playing too many games. I was playing for the first team, then maybe flying away with England, playing Thursday night somewhere, then flying back Friday, and then we're travelling to say Southampton on the coach, and then playing on the Saturday. And you're a young kid, so you can do it. There's no problem. But then it starts creeping up on you, and probably my own mindset was, I'm playing football, so it can't be that bad. I'm playing Premier League football. I've got a bit of and I can't really explain. It's like someone's got a bit of a knife and sticking it into your knee. You get a little sharp pain, but it goes away. And that's all I had. So I was thinking, I'm still running. I'm still, there's no swelling. There's nothing. I didn't understand injuries, or like in my head was, well, we'll play the game, and it can't be that bad. It might go away. But under Walter's training and Archie Knox, we used to do a lot of crossing and finishing. And being on the left side, there'd be me and a few others, and you'd be out for half an hour, 40 minutes after training, sort of messing about, doing a lot of crossing and practicing and stuff. And maybe one every three crosses, I get that sharp pain in me right knee every time I bent to try and whip it in. I was thinking, oh, this is it's getting worse and worse. And I probably kept it quiet for a long period of time because I didn't want to lose my place. I didn't want to sort of bring it up. But it comes to a point where you sort of off the cuff mark to a physio and go, my knee's a little bit. Like every time I kick a ball, something's happening, and they look at it, they assess it, and they go, well, they can't really see anything wrong with it. With the plastic, it wasn't really that tender. So again, all I did was precaution, ice it, if it was after each session or game, just as a precaution and play. But then it just started gradually getting worse and worse and worse. And then you're speaking to the physio, you're trying to manage it. Walter Smith was sort of great at the time. He understood. He'd try and pull me out of international weekends and weeks with England because he said, mate, you played too many games, you need to recover. And I wouldn't train. But probably my best season at the club, I never really trained. When Mondays I'd be recovery, and then that's when I was never out of the medical office. I was basically in there, and then turn up. Probably train with the first team a little bit on the Friday, and then play the games on the Saturday, and that happened for months. And while it was sort of good protecting me, you're probably losing your sharpness of not being, in and around training, playing the sharp games and stuff. So you're fitness-wise, you're probably losing a little bit, and you're trying to get the balance right with your fitness and keeping off your knees.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew there was something sort of not right. I understood the protection, but the protection of me sort of lasted for a long period of time. And it was only when there was an opportunity, the physio said, "Look, we can do an injection, and that hopefully will." You speak to the physios and the doctors, and at the time, the physio didn't really trust the Everton doctor, and we went to Western Hospital and spoke to a sort of surgeon there, doctor. He said, "Well, you can put this type of injection in to protect it, but you're going to be sore for a few days. I might be out for maybe a week to 2 weeks." After this injection, so we sort of timed it, around an international break, so I wasn't going to miss too much games, and that seemed to work. It was great, but obviously being injured on crutches for a few days afterwards, but this is it's sore, and you just hopefully get back. And as soon as I got back training, when the doctors allowed it, it was fine, back playing and no problem at all. But there was when the end of the season happened again, they said you need a second one because it's going to wear off. And I saw that I had the second one, and I said to the doctor at the time, I said I was on crutches for like 3 or 4 days after that, really sore. And he went, "You shouldn't have been on crutches." And I said, "Well, I was." And he went, "Well, that's not right." And so that was a bit of a warning signs. Well, I was like, "Well, I'm not lying." It was sore. He said, "Well, you played X amount of games, so blah blah." I went, "Yeah, I did." So it did work. So there was just the pain of it afterwards was more than what the doctor explained to me. So that was warning signs. And that summer, then I had a chance to rest, relax, and hopefully we need to be ready for pre-season. And it was still there or thereabouts, really. Come back pre-season, and then that's when sort of everything changed on the Everton side of the career. When I was never going to be a part of the first team. I was training by myself. The medical side, I was in sort of around the reserves, but then more training with like the fitness coach and the medical team, because Walter didn't want me a part of the club, which was devastating. So in mindset, you're just trying to hopefully prove a point to him that you're going to be fit and available, and he might change his mind, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah, mate, I feel for you massively in regard to the treatment that you need there, because I was always warned about getting injections or operations on my knee in that it's never quite the same afterwards, and sometimes
people said at the time, especially a few players said that at the time, but you're youngish, and you just put your trust into the medical people around you. If they're bringing it up as an option, I think an operation was an option, but they said that's a bit too drastic at this moment. There might be a chance of fixing it with injections. So you put your trust and faith in them that they're doing the right thing for you and the club. So you just go along with it and just thinking, well, hopefully I'm not part of that statistic of where it makes it worse.
And was that around the 2001 where you left the club? Yeah,
that was my last one was obviously at the end of that season. So coming back into pre-season, it was really disappointing. I had a good season. I was player of the year. I think it was 15 or 16 supporters. I got 15 out of the 16. And you think, Alex Young, and my dad was made up. I met Alex Young. He presented me the reward, and I was like, great. See you next season. We were talking about a new contract, but it wasn't like there was no rush for it. I had a couple of seasons left. There was sort of, because I've done well, that they wanted to give me a new contract, and I was away on holiday. But there was clubs putting all kinds of offers in. There was rumours of my situation, what was going on, and I didn't speak to anyone. I wasn't really interested. So I got the call to come back to Goodison to sign. So I broke my holiday up, went back, and unfortunately, by the time I got to Goodison, the secretary said, the board have changed their mind. They won't be offering the contract. So yeah, gutted. But I know I still had a couple of years anyway. So I was thinking, well, hopefully they might change their mind again. And I put it down to maybe my injury, thinking, well, they probably want to see me back playing first before, they offer me the contract again. But the club started putting in offers in. Obviously the Reds put a few in, Middlesbrough and Rangers, and but I wasn't really interested. But the press started finding out a bit more, what's going on. How come we're not involved in it all? And I was just really sickened that and I didn't actually get to speak to Walter Smith face to face to find out what's the problem. And in my own sort of selfish way, I was thinking, well, if I'm still here, he's going to go before me. We're not seeing eye to eye as we did early on. We got on really well when he first came, but our relationship did sort of sour near the end. But Rangers, where he's a legend, where he's he's seen as one of the best managers in their history. They've come sort of showing interest in me. Trevor Stephen was my agent. He lived up that way, and he basically said, "Mike, come up just for the weekend, get out to Liverpool. Just come up, relax." And David Murray wants to speak to you. He was the Rangers chairman, and you're thinking, well, if Walter didn't like me that much, he wouldn't be. Surely the chairman would have spoke to Walter regarding me and whatever. And it just sort of didn't add up that I didn't have a chance to speak to either the chairman to say, what's going on. But that's up to your agent. You just listen to what your agent's got to say. But I'd like to, at that moment in my career, be able to be a man and speak to people face to face and go, look, what's the issue? If you don't want me, let me know. But, he's just said he's going to, he said to me agent that I'm just going to be part of the reserves. You might rot in the reserves. And, I was sort of had my eye on England, 2002, the World Cup was in around the England setup at the time. And I'm thinking, well, it can't all stop now. And Steve McLaren phoned at the time to come up and look at the training ground. I go, I'm not interested. I'd rather train on my own, get fit, and hopefully an opportunity will happen. And then, like it did early that season, Walter never played me earlier on that season. And then through an injury or through force, he had to put me in, and I started playing well, and then he kept me in the side. And I ended up, as I said, got player of the year. So I'm thinking, well, let's just do the same again. You get the opportunity, proven wrong, and then I can get the we're talking about being the captain of the club and in the contract and everything. So everything was sort of half still rosy for me. I just needed to prove that my fitness was right. And maybe there's the political side of things behind it all, which now I'm older and wiser, and what I do now that's probably affected the decision of the board of thinking this knee could have been a lot worse than what they thought, and there's money problems, and they're getting a big offers from clubs that it's something they can't turn down. They can't take the risk of me offering me a new contract, and then I might break down within a few weeks, and it's sort of wasted money that they could have brought in transfer fee wise. So that's probably what's happened. But at that moment in time, when you're a player, you're just sort of devastated. The club that you love aren't showing the same love back, and then you just got to start thinking of what do you do for your career, which you never really wanted to do. All I wanted to do is play for Everton, captain the club, and be there, get me testimony. That was my dream. That's what I want to do. And when that got took away from you, you've sort of got to, from the low that it happened and the sadness at the time, you got to think, right, what can I do? Howard Wilkinson spoke to me numerous times. He was the England manager and part of the England under 21s and the head of the FA, and he was explaining he thought my game was getting too defensively. The way I broke onto the scene, I was quite attack-minded, but also good defensively. But maybe the way Everton played, sometimes you play with 5, 6, and maybe 7 defenders on the pitch at times. That come away from my game, and you need to sort of add it in. And if it's not going to be at Everton, you need to go and find a club that can play, forward thinking football and free flowing football, because it's going to block your England path. And you just listen to all the experts and people who were nice enough to reach out to find out what your situation is. And then when I went up to Rangers, we've got David Murray. If your listeners don't know, he lost his legs at 21, and he very good businessman. But just speaking face to face, he was showing me that sort of that love and that compassion. He was obviously doing the sales pitch on Rangers. I'm thinking, what's going on here? I've only come to out of respect, really, to say thanks very much for your interest. But going back to Everton, really. But then within a few hours of him showing me around Ibrox and showing that his time as the chairman, which I never got at the club I wanted, I made a phone call to my dad. I said, look, I think I'm, they're saying all the right things here. They're saying, like, he had Gascoigne, he had Gattuso, he got them playing Champions League football, got them into the England, got in the England team, and Bronkhurst and all these players who, some of them were obviously probably all the time at Rangers, but there was players there were he helped sort of shape their career, and what he was going to do is bring other players in to push the Scotland football into the Champions League, and you're in that sort of goldfish bowl up there of showing everyone what you're capable of, and you got game time. We're playing football, so he was saying all the right things to me and doing a big sales pitch, and I was thinking, oh my God, I think I'm going to sign, and we agreed, verbally agreed that that's what's going to happen. But then there was the long and twisted sort of, I think it probably went on for 2-3 weeks, because the medical side of things from Everton, Everton wouldn't send the records to Rangers or the medical records for one reason or another. So Rangers had to do a full medical on my knee because they knew of injections, they knew of something about my knee, so they wanted to get to the bottom of that. They had a full-time doctor, at the club, at the medical side of things, who looked after that, and he was great. But he said, "Look, you need to do this, you need to that." So that took 7-10 days or so of passing all these tests, and he was still scratching his head. I think he knew by looking at scans and photos there was something not right, but I was managing to be able to do what he was getting asked plus more. The manager, Dick Advocat, was happy with me with training, but I still hadn't signed. I could still probably pack up and just leave. I'd just go back to Everton. I'm not interested. But then I had that sort of doubt. I had sort of like 50-50 in my head, thinking, well, do I want to go back to Everton? I was like, yeah, but then I'm going, well, no one wants me there. So what am I going to do if I go back to Everton? Or the medical staff going to be the right decision with my knee? They've got a full-time doctor. They're doing all these tests I've never seen before. And I'm thinking, what can I do? So I was questioning myself and my decision. And it wasn't like an impulse, like I can sign for Rangers. I had to think about it for a long period of time. And there was probably a close chance that Rangers might pull the plug because what was happening. And Rangers lost out to John Hartson the year before because they'd done a similar thing with the medical and he failed. And as we all know, the following year he signed for Celtic. So, Rangers probably didn't want to miss out again. So the doctor did warn the club about my knee, but because I was physically going out training, doing it, they were happy with it. And funny enough, God rest his soul, Sean Connery was the guy who told me. He came. He was a good friend of David Murray. I was doing my fitness drills with the physio, and he just drove onto the pitch and sheltered me over, round his window down, got in the car and drove drove about 60 yards, I think. That's what it was to David Murray's office. And he said, look, we're going to sign you. I've spoke to Ken Wright and we've come up with an agreement of, I think it wasn't, he never flicked a coin. I think Everton wanted 7, Rangers didn't want to pay more than 6. And he explained that, we've come to a bit of an agreement that, we'll pay it in sort of milestones of when you hit certain targets. And when Goodison gets demolished, I'm going to get the steel out of Goodison. And I had a little smirk on my face thinking, does most of it's made out of wood. But thinking, but he didn't have to tell me all this, and that was sort of the honesty that he had.
Yeah, honesty, yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking, okay, so it's obviously in cement there that Everton have accepted an offer, and there was nothing else I can do. So I was thinking, right, that's me start of a new career now, and Rangers, this is it. And going back to Belfield and picking up your stuff, that was the worst probably time of my career. Going in and saying sorry, saying sorry, really, not saying sorry, saying Taraz to the people I've been around with for years. The girls in reception and the dinner ladies, the groundsmen who you mess about with at lunchtime, playing head tennis, and you're just going to miss being around it. And then that's when you start thinking, this is the right decision, and we're doing the right thing. But it was out of my hands. The club didn't want me. So there was nothing else I can really do. I could probably bide my time and wait till Walter Smith leaves. But what happens if they played well and there's no opportunity for me? I'm crucial age and not playing football at 2021. It was and after being a part of it for roughly 3 years would have been a blow for me. So it was sort of total mindset, going back, picking my boots up, picking my bits up, breaking down in the car, getting home and thinking, right, well, that's that over and done with, and maybe one day I'll return. But now it's new doors open, new challenge, and it's up to me to sort of prove to Rangers, why they've, risk a lot of money for me to bring a young kid to them.
Excellent, and I wish you every success in the future. You're obviously very insightful and analytical with your experiences. You've got a hell of a lot to offer to the game and to the young players coming through. I just want to say, Michael, it's been absolutely fantastic to speak with you, and you're more than welcome to be a guest on the podcast in the future.
No problem at all. Thanks for your time.
Take care, Michael. Thanks for speaking to me, mate.
Cheers. No worries, mate. Ta-ra.